So I feel like everybody right now is obsessed with self-discovery and different forms of healing. I mean, my TikTok is absolutely filled with how to heal your gut, how to heal your hormones, all of these different things that are stepping away from this traditional Western way to approach things. And like, yes, this feeds into health if you take it literally, but I think it can also feed into your creative endeavors and how you approach life and just all those things. Cause I mean, it really is a holistic approach, right? So, I wanted to chat about some of the few self discovery tools and healing tools that I've personally used that I feel like they're not unconventional, but just things that have worked for me. I've learned about from traveling and just, getting in too many TikTok holes. But anyway, I feel like we always, there's those jokes of like, your boyfriend needs to go to therapy, this or that. Like, I mean, please go to therapy. Absolutely. Like, everybody needs talk therapy. But I think sometimes, you kind of hit a point where you've not been there, done that, but you get it and you want to expand further. Or that might work really well for your relationships. But when you want to dive into your health or your creativity, you need some of those other tools and different things to just get out of your head. I don't know about you guys, but I am a total overthinker, can get lost in the, sit there and daydream or anxiety or whatever that might be. So I've started to pick up some tools over the years that just let me get out of my own head and let me get out of my own way. Okay, so we'll just dive in here. But the first one I want to talk about, I think, is most closely related to talk therapy that we all know and love. But a friend of mine started studying, it's called RTT hypnotherapy. So this is rapid something transformational. I don't know, but it is absolutely incredible. So she was studying this, and that was really my first introduction into utilizing hypnotherapy versus traditional talk therapy. And honestly, I think as someone who works in media, and so many of us nowadays, it's so easy to put up, a guard or know how to spin a story, whatever that might be. So I feel like I would always get in my own way during talk therapy sessions. So hypnotherapy was a very cool approach. I'll kind of fill you in on like what the process was like. So you had this initial consultation, kind of feeling out exactly what you wanted to talk about. I know you guys have heard this story before. Did this, it was post breakup during a job change, just kind of like resetting my life of, okay, I've always approached work or creativity like X. I want to try to get to Y, but what is that path in between all of that? So that's what I chatted with her about. And I felt like a few things were getting in my way and very New York centric issues of, you want to do things because, there's this added pressure of it has to monetize, or you only have so much time in your day. You're rushing between place to place. And all of that can be really overwhelming. And I think get in the way of just creativity and letting yourself enjoy and be present. So I talked with her about that. Then we dove into the session. I did one session with her, but you could do, you could keep going and going and going. But the point of hypnotherapy is that you don't need to go as often or keep doing it. So during the session, the technique she used essentially like got you into this hypnotic state. She used a method that was like you were visualizing and like walking down these stairs. Someone else knows way more about that than I do, but very cool. So you start to have visions come up. And it's not in this woo woo vision way, but almost like, when you're daydreaming or you're watching a movie and there's a flashback and things start to kind of like fog up and create a picture. It's sort of like that. And she would give you prompts. And oh my God, the most random visions that I never could have pinpointed in regular talk therapy came up for the issues that I wanted to talk about. And it was just completely fascinating. So this session lasted maybe about like 2 or 3 hours of her just walking through, confronting things. Like, and it wasn't deep or scary. You weren't out of control. You were in control the whole time, which I do feel like is kind of a misconception, is it feels like, oh my God, what's going to happen to me? I'm in this state. But it was not like that at all. And then what you did was you listened to this recording you did at the end of the session for 3 weeks after. You could do that, once a day. You could do it more than that if you wanted. But it started to then reframe the way you thought about things. And oh my God, this was the most effective thing for me. After a month of doing this, I feel like I let go of all these bad habits and thought patterns that I used to have and just felt so much more refreshed and like clear headed. So I thought that was very cool. If you've been in a talk therapy rut, I highly recommend giving that a try. And then some of the more like woo woo things that I've also done that have been so helpful for me. And honestly, I mean, I know there's a reputation with astrology girls and whatnot, but learning about your birth chart was so incredibly helpful. And, I think when you think of horoscopes, you're just like, okay, this is your sun sign. Like, I'm a Scorpio and it ends there. And yes, like that is an important facet of it. But learning about your birth chart as a whole, whether it's whether you believe in astrology or not, either way, it's getting you to think about yourself, which is helpful in absolutely any sense. But once I learned about my moon sign, like, oh my God, I live, breathe my Google Calendar and love a good list. Like, that came from my Virgo moon. But I also love media, hence, here we are in a podcast, and I'm a writer and all these different things. And when you look at my chart, it's like filled with media, and it kind of just helped give me directions of, okay, this is a natural talent of mine. It makes sense that I enjoy this. And different things too of I have a Sagittarius stellium, which is all about travel and exploration and looking at life like an adventure. So there's different things like that, but it also then pairing about okay, so I have Sagittarius in, or my Venus is in Sagittarius, and Venus is like love, relationships. And for me, I look at relationships as like a big adventure, and like I want an adventure buddy to come along with me on life, whatever. Um, but it just helped you to think about things in a different context than sitting there and getting in your head and just kind of being like, why do I act like this? Why do I like these things? It just kind of gave something a name that feels so vague or overwhelming. So I think that's really interesting. I highly recommend, even if you're kind of anti astrology, maybe, don't go into the transits readings. Like, I get it. That might be a little overwhelming if you're not, so much in, okay, in September, the energy is going to be like X. But looking internally, I highly recommend. Another thing that's kind of similar to this is I started to get into tarot. I'm pretty beginner, but what I like about it is I'll do this on like a Sunday night or a Monday, kind of like recapping a week or looking ahead to a week and just pulling cards intuitively. And again, it's kind of this similar vibe of getting you in this headspace and it brings up certain things. So pulling a card and you're like, oh, I didn't think about this situation like this, or asking your deck for advice to turn you a certain way. I think that's really interesting. Just getting your head in, again, these different headspaces, thinking through yourself or a situation, and just, it's kind of similar of maybe if you did have a therapist or a friend that was helping you think about a situation in a different way, but not having to rely on other people and having these like tools in your toolkit to help you achieve these different ways of thinking. Another practice, I think I've talked about this before, but if not, I've talked about it on TikTok or somewhere. And this is totally blown up, especially on TikTok. But I think vision boarding is another tool that feels very, I don't want to say overdone, but just it's kind of like that silly, like manifest and believe. And like, yes, it can be like that. But I think using it as a tool and a way to get to know yourself and setting your intentions is honestly, it's very helpful. And I'm not gonna lie, every time I've made a vision board, that shit has come into fruition and it is so freaking wild. Though I think I told this story before, but if not, whatever, I'll tell it again. So at the beginning of last year, I make a vision board every year, right around the holidays, setting the intentions for the year. And I do it also, yes, very intuitively. I think some people, when they do it, it's very like, I want this Prada bag. I'm going to stick a picture on there. My approach more so is like, okay, I'm going to go through Pinterest, go through these pictures that I've been saving throughout the year and just see what feels right and look more so like at the vibe of the picture. How does it make you feel? What's the elements in it? How does that person like what's the look on their face? You know what I mean? And there's been a couple instances where I remember once I put on a picture that felt really kind of dark, but I thought the vibe was cool. And I remember applying it to a past relationship from a few years ago. And I was like, but it's a really cute relationship picture. And we broke up. And it just, that told a lot about it. It fit the vibe. And then I was walking past that same sort of bench and it just all like, it came into fruition all far too well. Anyway, so when I did this last year, I don't know what the hell got into me, but I was like pulling pictures from just everywhere that looked cool. I was like, Colombia, this place, this place. I didn't even know what it was. And did all of that. I was on a big Anthony Bourdain kick. So I was like saving pictures of Anthony Bourdain. And then I'll put quotes on there too. And every quote was about an adventure, living many lives, doing things for the first time. And normally when I make these vision boards, it's all been very like career oriented or like love oriented. And that was always what was really top of mind for me. And as you guys know, was always such a big factor in my life. So anyway, this vision board, and this vision board is so colorful. As you guys know, everything is like black, white for me. There's some red in there, very neutral. And this shit was so colorful. So 2 weeks go by. I break up with my ex. I get a new job. All of a sudden, like things start just rolling. And I end up, as we know, in Central America. And I literally remember, so I was there. I met this guy while I was in Costa Rica. I was supposed to be there for 2 weeks, just made a ton of friends, was having so much fun, started this podcast through going and interviewing people. It felt very Anthony Bourdain. I met this guy. He invited me to Guatemala. And then all of a sudden, I'm like going to take a TikTok and I'm like, oh my God, I am in front of this wall that was quite literally on that vision board, which is so insane. So it's just crazy to like see that keep coming into fruition. And that entire 2022 was all about adventure. There was a lot of different facets too. Like it was all very expansive. And that's exactly what that year was like. So really interesting. So I guess whether you really are manifesting with it per se, or if it's just helping you understand like what are those inner desires that you're having, that I was sitting in New York and craving adventure. Either way, it just put that more into a different stance and just through a new lens. So I think that was really helpful for me. And then leaning more into less of this like mental healing, but leaning into this actual physical healing. Yeah, I'm a big fan of alternative medicines, and there are so many. I won't tell you what is, right for you. There's so much detail that goes into each one, but I will say I was always someone that had health issues stemming from like being a child. Like I always had trouble with like sugar, with like stomach issues, hormonal issues, like just all of it's gone through waves. And my mom is an absolute angel and also kind of alternative and woo-woo like myself. So I've tried a bunch of these different methods of pinpointing what exactly is wrong. But case in point, whatever avenue you're using, what I really do like about holistic healing is that it's going more towards the core of the issue rather than putting a band-aid on symptoms. And I think that takes a lot of exploration and a lot of trial and error. And I'm not gonna lie, like those can be really expensive. But figuring out, I think, what aligns with you is so important. A few things that I've really, really liked, acupuncture. That's done amazing things for me. And I think this all kind of goes into flowing, and it's all stemmed from Ayurveda as well, which I really resonate with Vedic astrology and Ayurveda practices. That's something I'm learning a lot more about right now. So by no means I'm an expert on it, but have learned a lot more about that while I've been in Bali and trying to learn more about it in New York too. But I think that's been really great and really helpful. And looking more towards natural healing. So that could be anything from making lifestyle swaps. I know, especially in New York, but really all in Western culture, our adrenal glands are just getting overworked. We have cortisol levels through the roof with stress and whatnot. So finding different ways to lower stress. And I swapped out my workouts to doing Pilates. I'm sure if you follow me on Instagram, I sing Body Rock's praises like no tomorrow. But oh my gosh, that has been so helpful for me. And I noticed like results in my body and myself just being more excited to go to the workouts and seeing the results mentally and physically. That being super important. And then using supplements too. I used to like, I kid you not, if I had like a bite of cake or a piece of cheese, I would be keeled over in a fetal position for the next like 72 hours. Absolutely horrendous times. Like we won't even go there. I'm sure, hot girls with stomach issues, I'm sure you get it. But I started to do a ton of research into supplements. And when you're putting things into your body, like, don't just read one article on the internet and then go out and, spend $50 on a supplement and like throw random things in your body. Like, please absolutely do not do that. But I also had a lot of issues with hormones, and I sat there and really dug and did research on PCOS and PMDD. And when I started to do this, it took about, I would say, like 3 months for these supplements to really get in and like resonate. But not all, but a vast majority of those symptoms that I was having started to go away. I mean, vulnerably, I was like losing hair. I was like having a lot of trouble with like weight fluctuations, all of that, a lot of mood swings. And taking those helped me so much in comparison to taking birth control that my OBGYN was like forcing down my throat for years and years and years. So, case in point, with all of this is a lot of different information, but the whole really just ethos of this is to look into different ways of doing things. And, maybe that's approaching your career differently, your mental health, your physical health, but being expansive, being a learner, and just finding ways that make you feel better in your day to day, I think is so incredibly important. I feel like we're talking a lot about this lately. So take what resonates, try some of these out, see if they work for you. And if not, that is totally okay. But I also want to hear about your experiences because there is just like so much to learn. I'll sit and get rabbit holes about this. But I think it's so fascinating. And hopefully these things work as well for you as they did for me.